You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from right here in absolutely gorgeous Northport, Florida. I have a very special guest in the house today, Miss Alaina Ray. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad it's Friday.
A rough week for you?
It's been a rough year, and every week seems to get a little harder. But yeah, it's been the last few weeks have been really really tough.
And what's happening right now that makes it tough for you guys at City Hall?
Oh gosh, so everything from illnesses. I was really sick.
I know you were.
I've
I know.
had staff who was sick. Um, on top of that, trying to meet deadlines for projects that have been assigned to us, and of course, the ULDC is a tough one. I'll say that 2 weeks ago when I was running 103-degree fever, I was still working and on meetings and Teams meetings, and it's rough. We need some sleep.
It still doesn't sound like your voice is back.
It's not back 100%. I did totally lose my voice for a few days there and had bronchitis and everything else. So it was kind of rough, but I'm happy to at least be back in the office where I can work here instead of working at home.
And I'm glad you're feeling better. And I will tell you that I know that you were sick because you were not at the farmers market, which is right across from where you live. So hopefully you'll be out there this weekend.
I'm planning to be there. I'm really excited about that farmers market, and I love that we've got one on the east side of town.
Yes,
that's exactly what we need.
So Shop Local actually did that, and Jake has done a nice job. So if you don't know where it is, it actually the farmers market is next to the emergency room for Sarasota Memorial on Toledo Blade. So come out to the farmers market on Saturday. Let's support them. They're trying to make it bigger and better than ever every week. So it's going to be awesome. Yeah. So Robin posted the first question. So I'll go with Robin. Hi, Robin. She says, remember what I said. If you don't pay attention to yourself, the universe will make you pay attention.
That's right.
Yourself.
Robin was here in the office a few days ago, and I had the pleasure of seeing her, and she knows how sick I was recently. And she was urging me to take care of myself and take some time off. And I promised her that we get past, the next couple of months, I will take some time off. We can't keep doing 12-hour days, 14-hour days all the time. I know we've got to have some time to kind of rest.
So can you give an overview of what your job is? Just a quick overview so that listeners understand it.
Sure. So as Director of Development Services, I've got 5 divisions that I'm over. Planning and zoning, building, which is permitting and inspections of all the building, natural resources, which is it's our newest division, and code enforcement, which is everybody's favorite division in the city. And recently, just within the last couple of months, I was asked to take over the economic development division, which was formerly housed in the city manager's office. So that's a lot of scope. There's a lot there. And so I'm dealing with everything from, even trying to attract businesses and work with our current businesses to ensure that they've got the services that they need to survive and thrive. New building coming in, going through the planning process, getting construction done, working on environmental initiatives, which we have a lot of new stuff that we're working towards. And I just was working with our natural resources manager this afternoon. We've got some new tree planting initiatives that we're going to be doing, and just lots of great stuff. But it's a lot. We've got about 85 employees in my department.
So I want to stay right there. You said trees, and I've been reading some social media stuff out there, and we have a new tree policy in place now. Can can you explain? And it's like in depth, but can you like quickly hit what happens now with the clearing of lots, and then talk about how the
Yeah.
into trees?
Right. So the city, right? I've been with the city, working for the city for 2.5 years, and right after I came in, they had been working on a new tree ordinance, and it was adopted right about the time that I got here. Um, it was really intended to keep people from clear cutting lots. That was the goal, was to save trees. But what we found pretty quickly was that that's not what was happening. The ordinance included a provision that let anybody clear cut as long as they wrote a big enough check to the city's tree fund. And unfortunately, most developers, most builders, they're more than happy to pull out their checkbook and write that check. So we were still seeing lots cleared, clear cut with no protections. And I know we had a lot of people residents who were upset about the properties like at Sumter and Price, where the apartments are going in. That was clear cut. Yeah, the ordinance let them clear cut it. Unfortunately, they wrote a $250,000 check in order to do that. And there was nothing in the ordinance that let us prohibit them from doing that. So we're making some tweaks with the ULDC rewrite. We're changing some things about that tree ordinance so that they can't just clear cut everything. We're mandating that they preserve trees, a certain percentage of habitat and trees on the property, and we're changing it so that the way builders have always worked here is they get their surveys, and they design their site based on their survey and their property lines, with almost really no regard for what's on the property now, what kind of protected species they have, or what kind of trees they have. We're making changes to require them to look at the natural features of the site first and design around it. And it's going to be a big change for our builders and for contractors, but it's the right thing to do. We want to make sure that we preserve what makes this area so gorgeous and special.
So one of our commissioners, Alice White, has been forever known for trees. I know Robin is part of the tree organization, and my thought here is, when she became the commissioner, she has to look at things through a wider lens a lot of times, versus the trees. There's some conflict, I'm sure, with her, and I have talked to her about it. And what I'm wondering is, when you see all this stuff and you're talking about the trees, she's still an advocate for trees.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of people say that she's not for that anymore, and there needs to be a correction on that, because she's in a different role now than just the tree lady, and so those things matter. But go ahead.
It does, and it does put her in a difficult position. Almost every time I talk to the mayor, she talks about trees. She says something to me about trees. She's really passionate about it, and she does care about it. I think that what a lot of people don't realize is that when you become an elected official, it doesn't free you up to do things the way you want to. In a lot of cases, it ties your hands, because now you're subject to a lot of regulations, and you're subject to some state laws. And a lot of times people find out they have these great ideas they want to implement, when they get elected, and then they find out what the reality is. And sometimes the state legislature fights against us on those kinds of things. We've got new legislation that just came into effect that says, we can't make builders do anything that's more burdensome than what our current regulations are. Well, that's great.
Well, and that's the state. So I love it when we have these dialogues, because we learn that it's blame the city, blame the city, blame the city, but there's a higher power a lot of times too.
Oh yeah, the legislature can be a double-edged sword.
Right.
They can do things that help us, but sometimes they do things that, for whatever reason, sometimes we don't know what their logic is, but that ties the local government's hands from being able to enact regulations that will save our environment, or save trees, or ensure that we have more protections for our residents. And it's one of those things where we may want to do the right thing, and the right thing for the local government is to make people preserve a certain number of trees, or make people get permits for cutting trees down. And then the legislature comes in and says, if you're a single family property owner, you don't have to get a permit. And, those kinds of things are sort of taking away the control at the local level. And it's unfortunate, but so many people don't realize that there are those state laws that they're adopting every year that make it harder for us to do the types of things that some of our local residents want us to be able to do.
Right. So Tammy, I hope I say this, Reem. She says, I'm glad you're feeling better. Has the city looked at getting electric, water, and sewer in areas that do not have single family homes as a priority to get commercial properties soon, so taxes cannot be raised?
Yeah, having the goal is that when we have commercial development come in, anytime we have a commercial development, multifamily development, or industrial development come in, the city doesn't pay to extend that infrastructure. The developer has to pay for it. So the goal by having more areas where commercial can be located, is so that the developer is the one who's paying for that. We don't want the residents to pay to extend the services there. We want the developers to pay for that. So yes, we are looking at ways. I was in a meeting this week where we were with a developer, and we were talking to them about what they're going to need to do to extend utilities to their site. City's certainly not paying for that. We don't want our taxpayers paying for that. So that is the burden of the developer. If they want to develop in a site, they're going to have to get the utilities, and then anyone who is along that route where water and sewer and utilities have been run by the developer, now those residents can tap into that. So it definitely reduces the cost to taxpayers in the long run.
Right. So I'm going to slide back to trees here just for a second, and you can probably group several things into this, and not just trees, but the majority of the violations that seem to happen because people know how to play the game happen after 5 p.m. and on the weekends.
Yeah.
Are we addressing that in any way?
We, like you said, it happens on the weekends. It happens at night. We don't have the staff to be able to, work 24/7. I've got 4 code enforcement officers covering the entire city, 104 square miles. And unfortunately, I don't have anyone who can work on the weekends at this point right now, but we have a very active citizenry, and we hear from them if something's happening. And so there have been times where we've had police that have gone out and checked to see if somebody has permits. We definitely respond to all of the people who call us. If somebody is on a weekend if somebody sees land being cleared and they go online, they can look up the property to see if they have permits. If they don't have permits, call the police department. They'll get out there. Um, so there are ways that it can be reported, and we can get on that. We definitely want clearing and things like that to stop when people don't have permits. That's just not acceptable.
So, I've got I've got thoughts in my head about the ULDC myself, and I know that there's good, bad, and ugly within the ULDC.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to hit the good, and I don't want to hit the bad. I want to talk about some ugly. What are some of the ugly conversations or ugly things that the citizens have brought to your attention that maybe there's and I'm not going to do what everybody thinks. I'm not going to say misinformation. How about let's give them some correct information?
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some of the hot topics on some of the major issues going on with the ULDC? I know the grass was one of them, parking on the grass in your yard, and that seems to be a really hot button for people. And me, of course, I tend to believe that a property owner should be able to park in his yard if he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
But can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And the parking, that was part of a city code. So there's two codes. And a lot of people don't realize this, but there's what's called the code of the city, which is we'll call it a book. It's a book of laws that has everything like nuisance laws and how the city has to operate financially, and parking laws as far as where people can park on streets, and police powers and those kinds of things. And then there's the separate code, which is the Unified Land Development Code that manages the land development. So there are two different codes. The parking regulations, those are part of the city code, the police powers. And that went into effect, I think it was October of last year, and that was pretty controversial. And the main thing that changed in that at that time was parking on the grass. There'd always been limits on how many vehicles could be parked on a property and how many boats could be parked on a property, and trailers and those kinds of things. And the numbers didn't change when the ordinance changed in October. Really, the thing that changed was parking on the grass. And there, depending on how things go, there may be, a desire to revisit that and look at ways to maybe soften it, or, compromises that can be worked out. One of the problems they were having is that when we had people parking either in the swales or driving through the swales every day, it was causing damage to them. And then we were having a lot of erosion, and that erosion ends up blocking the culverts. And so we had a lot of flooding. And then also it's hard to keep those areas mowed. There have been places where fires have started from hot catalytic converters, and of course, we all know the brush fires are bad right now. So hopefully we get some rain soon. But the primary thing was the damage that it was causing to those swales. So that was sort of the catalyst behind the change in the ordinance at that time. The Unified Land Development Code, the rewrite of that, some of the ugly that we've seen are instances where we've had anytime you make big changes, it's hard. It's really hard. And when you have a city that is platted out the way Northport is, with lots of single family lots, it's even harder. We had a big issue with, unfortunately, back starting years ago, when part of the eastern part of the city was changed in the comprehensive plan to Activity Center 6 out by the Yorkshire area. They were supposed to change the zoning at the same time. And this was about 17, 18 years ago. They were supposed to change the zoning at the same time. And for some reason they didn't. So it still showed the zoning as single family, but the comp plan was activity center, which didn't allow single family. And according to state law, you can't issue permits if the use is in violation of the comp plan. Permits were still getting issued in a certain section of Activity Center 6, south of, south of 75. And it was causing some issues. And so when we were doing the ULDC rewrite, of course, we needed to get that area in compliance with the comp plan. So we were going to change the zoning to make sure that it was consistent. And we heard from a lot of residents out there and people who owned properties out there who were in the process of building their houses or, starting the process of that. And it really caused a lot of angst, and understandably so. And so we spent a lot of time talking with those residents and talking with our commissioners, and came up with the solution to carve out certain areas south of 75 in that Yorkshire area to continue to allow single family homes in that area. That was an ugly, that was
ugly, real ugly.
Bad. It was an ugly, my heart broke for people because I had people in my office crying about the financial hole that they were in from having to stop a build or from not being able to pursue a build. And it was heartbreaking, and we really wanted to find a solution. And I'm really glad that we were able to. It's those kinds of things. We had another issue with the Heron Creek Golf Course. Somehow the residents got information, I don't know where it came from, saying that we were going to change the golf course so that the developer could stop the golf course. It could close the golf course and rebuild
more houses
and build more houses. And I'm not sure how that came about, but we put some information out. We talked to a lot of people to make sure that they understood that that's not what we were doing. And if there was something in the proposed, ULDC that made it appear that that's what we were doing, we wanted to make sure we got that corrected, because that's not what we were doing.
Right.
And so, I think we've got that worked out. But it's those kinds of things where it's interesting because things will flare up, that we're going along, we're working, we got our heads down working, and then all of a sudden a fire will flare up. And so we'll all kind of huddle onto that fire and jump on it and work to put that out. And
I guess it's a blessing that our fire department is so close.
I tell them to stay on standby. Yeah, you
got it. So and I'm going to come back to Robin. Then Chuck has a question, but there is something to be said about staff and how you guys handle yourself, and also when you're under fire from citizens. Is there a particular way that and I'm not going to say every citizen should act a certain way, because that's not true. But is there a way to accomplish things and get things done without maybe taking pot shots and personal?
Talk to us. I talk to citizens every day, and my door's open. I want to talk to people. If someone has something that's bothering them, an issue with a proposal that's being done, or call me, email me. We'll set up a meeting. We'll meet. Our staff, we're human. We're not going to get it right 100% of the time, and we know that. We do the best we can, especially with the amount of our workloads and with the, time constraints that we have, we do everything we can, but we're human and we're not going to get it right 100% of the time. And that's why we have these vetting processes with the public and with the commission and planning and zoning board. And we don't take it, we're not going to take it personally. If we get something wrong, we want to fix it. We're not going to take that personally, but we are people, and we, when we're called names on Facebook or wherever else, that it hurts. And a lot of my staff, myself and a lot of my staff, we're residents of Northport. We own homes here. We're raising our families here. We go to church here, and we're part of the community. And we're not doing any of this. Nothing that we do is to hurt anybody. So if there's something that is being done that somebody doesn't like or doesn't understand, reach out to us. We will sit down all day long with people to, work through issues and come up with solutions.
So I'm curious, and then I'm going to go to Robin, but I'm curious, how many people have made an appointment, and we're 87,000 plus in this town. Take the kids away, we're what, 75,000, roughly.
Yeah.
But if you look at it that way, how many people have made an appointment to come in and sit down and talk with you about the ULDC? Just that one thing.
Just off the top of my head, just a ballpark number, maybe 15 or 20 over the last 2 years.
So you're not one a day. You're not seeing it.
Yeah.
There are groups out here that are 100% doing the research and doing things like that. But have they met with you, or is it more individual?
So we have, as far as going out and meeting with people, we've met the Chamber of Commerce, put together a task force to review the ULDC. We have given presentations to them. I've personally gone to all of the Northport United events, and a lot of those events that have almost seems like a lot of them have almost solely focused on the ULDC. And I've stood there in front of an audience of 100 people and, answered questions for an hour and a half.
Yep.
So, there are groups like that. I know, a couple of citizens, one citizen in particular, she put together kind of a group and a Facebook group about the rezoning and has really worked hard to get news out to people. And she and I have talked, and, I think, when she first started doing it, maybe she didn't really understand what we were doing, and we didn't really understand what she was doing. And I think we've kind of talked since then, and that has become a useful tool for to get that word out to people both ways. Absolutely. It's planning in a vacuum is not what we want to do. We do like having those discussions and with groups or individuals, and that's the best way to do it, is with community involvement.
Awesome. I'm going to go on to Robin's question regarding the parking in the right of ways. If my neighbors can continuously park their vehicles in front of my home and do damage, I wind up being responsible for this. And I hope not. But that tends to be the answer, I think, too. At the same time, is the same issue with illegal dumping.
It kind of is. We've gotten calls from people who say, "Hey, my neighbor keeps parking in my swale in front of my house. What do I do?" And that's a difficult one. It's illegal dumping, damage to the swales. Not only does it hurt the property owner, who may not be responsible for, who may not be the one causing the damage or isn't the one causing the dumping, it still comes back to them having to deal with that damage or deal with the dumping. And sometimes it comes back to the taxpayers having to go clean up that that trash or repair the swale, and then we're all paying for those things. So
Right.
yeah, it's it is a balancing act as far as regulations versus the cost to the taxpayers.
And it's
And
and I got to tell you, as a neighborly neighbor, I if somebody's parked on my street, if they're on the street and I know there's no parking allowed, I'm not picking up the phone and calling the police.
yeah, go talk to your neighbor.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm gonna talk to my neighbor, maybe meet them for the first time.
Yeah,
Because a lot
exactly.
of our citizens don't even know their neighbors. And I'm not doing a pot shot at anyone. It's that we run our lives like crazy. I mean, my life today was upside down, and I had to beat feet back here to do this. And other people are beating feet to get their kids to a park or get, their kids to playgrounds and sports events and all those things. So life goes forward with all these things happening, and sometimes the best way to handle it is just to go talk to your neighbor. Robin, I
Right.
know she knows her neighbors, but and
Yeah.
it's probably one of the best things in the world to do is find out who your neighbor is and just say, listen, if you don't mind, don't park in my swell, park in your swell.
Yeah.
If you're going to do
And,
the job, be responsible.
and you know what? That can have a lot of benefits. I mean, we had an issue where our driveway was damaged, after Ian. Our roof was totaled like everybody else's roof
Right.
was totaled, and for a while we needed a place to park, and we couldn't park in the driveway and we couldn't park in the street. And so we went and talked to a neighbor and said, hey, do you have some extra room in your driveway? And they said, sure. So and then we pay that forward. We had some neighbors down the street who, same thing was happening with them. And we said, hey, come park in our driveway.
Yep.
We've got room. Come park
Figure it
over
out.
here. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
neighbors being neighbors. Yeah.
Yep. So Chuck English has a question. Hi, Chuck. Question: give an outline of who the environmental administrator is and their duties and responsibilities. Appears to allow for a lot of discretionary action as it relates to the ULDC.
So I would need to go in and look to see where it says environmental administrator. I know as far as the ULDC administrator, that's me. So I think that might be what he's referring to. The ULDC administrator is a term that's used in the Unified Land Development Code, and it's used in a lot of land development codes. It always means the director of the department who is over land development. So that's going to be me, or someday if somebody else is sitting in my chair, whoever that person is. And typically there is a lot of discretion there for the ULDC administrator. I think there's some language that talks about that in the environmental chapter. But it's in some other chapters as well. But it's for those times when there may not be a hard and fast rule, or there needs to be some room for either negotiation or for unique circumstances. And there's always a process if someone disagrees with something. So if I make a decision regarding something with the ULDC and somebody doesn't agree with that, we always make sure there is a process by which someone can appeal that. And it may not, I'd have to go in and look. It may not say discretion. There may be certain instances where I have to approve something, or if a waiver is being not a waiver because the commission approves waivers, but where we're able to make some decisions.
Yep.
But it's not that anybody on staff can do that. It's always one appointed person, and that is the person who's sitting in my position. And then if there is any aggrieved party or somebody who doesn't agree with what was done, The ULDC will always have a method for anybody to appeal that. And it's an important, those appeal processes are really important to have. It's a stopgap measure to make sure that, decisions are made appropriately and that there can be a third party review of those decisions. It's also, I want to say it's one of the reasons why when you get to this level, it's important that you have some well-rounded experience. I know Chuck's concerns are highly invested in the environmental world, and and I share that with him. For people who don't know my background, I know Chuck knows some. Robin, we've had a chance to talk. Barbara Lockhart, we've all been able to sit down and talk. But I started off as an environmental planner. My background is environmental planning. I was a project manager on Everglades restoration. I've had my head down a gopher tortoise burrow, trying to save a tortoise from a bulldozer. I stopped for tortoises. I stopped in the middle of Haberland the other day to move a gopher tortoise out of the street. So using my body to shield it from cars. I think it's important that when you do have people in our positions, that they are people who have the knowledge and the experience to understand those issues and take them seriously. And, I know I certainly do. And I know my staff and in my leadership staff and natural resources staff are extremely dedicated and are really advocates for the environment. So I know they've been meeting a lot with Robin. I don't know if they've been able to get with Chuck or not, but I think he's talked with some of them, and they are very dedicated people, and I'm so happy that we've got them on our team.
And I've had them on the show. Kevin, he's been on the show. Fantastic as far as trying to educate out and get people to understand what they're doing. We didn't have that. And Teresa Lamb, I'm going to get your question next, just so you know. We didn't have that until they started clearing trees. And isn't that part of this whole process here of the change that kind of created more of a environmentally not friendly, but friendly with a cause? Is that better way?
I would say, environmentally conscious.
Yeah, there you go.
It seems like, especially in the development world, the environment is always the thing that's thought of last. And it takes a while to turn the ship, because these processes and development regulations, they're always big ships to turn. But we want the environment to be the first thing that people think of before they develop, not the last thing, and I think we've got the team in place now that we can do that. We're working to get our regulations in place that we can do that. If the state would stop throwing roadblocks in front of us to keep us from being able to implement those things, it'd be great. But we are going to do everything that we can do to make sure that for the next 20 years, 30 years, as we go forward, the environment is the first thing people think of and not last. Because it's so important to all of us.
It is. And I will definitely get the environmental department back on, because I myself am not against the environmental side of things. It's ironic that there are groups that I agree with. These groups, Robin and I have talked, Chuck and I have talked, and the nice thing when you talk and when you kind of work things out, the meter moves a little bit. One way or the other, it moves, and it's the people that don't have conversations that think they're right all the time, and there's only one direction, and that's a difficult thing to be as a true leader in the community. I don't care who you are. You can't really lead if you're closed-minded enough not to have open dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what we strive for is balance. We can't always make everybody happy. I think I've always said, when you're a planning director, you're always making somebody unhappy.
You are,
You're
right?
making one
And
side
that,
happy,
and that-
making the other side unhappy, and nobody's ever happy with you, you know? So, um, I mean, it kind of comes with the job. But we want there needs to be a balance.
right.
You know? And it's funny because sometimes people who, you know, I've had in the past people who were really against something that, you know, was going on, and then they make an appointment, they come in and they talk to me, and we sit down and we have a conversation. And what they find is we actually think more alike than they thought we did, and we have more in common than they thought we did, and we actually think we have the same views on this, you know. But maybe I have the same views on it, but my hands are tied by the state law or regulatory stuff, or, you know, all kinds of stuff, direction that I've been given. I work for somebody and I have to follow direction I'm given. But it's interesting that more times than not, once we sit down and start having those conversations, they realize, hey, we actually do kind of think alike. and we have a whole lot more in common than we have differences.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with this whole thing, because you've got so many things as a leader of the city, and you are in leadership in our city, just like the commissioners are all in leadership. They may have to do something they really don't like because their hands are tied, and you got to move not always moving the city forward, but you kind of do have to move the city forward, because there's a just in wildlife. We could have this conversation with Chuck, because the counterbalance to a decision is an easy one to sit back and talk about, but it's the hard fact that you have to make the decision. And there's, you may agree with Chuck even sometimes on the I don't want to do that and cause the counterbalance, but I don't have that option. And I think that's where the citizens need to come in and maybe get more educated and understand and have those conversations, have those dialogues.
Yeah, because I mean, I can tell you personally, there have been times when, you know, I've had to recommend approval of something, or I've had to sign off on something, and I'm literally sick to my stomach, you know, because I personally, on a personal level, I don't agree with it, and I don't have a choice. And you know, the commissioners, sometimes they're put in those same positions where they have to say yes to something when their heart tells them no. And because of the constraints that are put on us, you know, we either say yes, or, you know, we face serious legal issues. And yeah, unfortunately,
it's not every decision. It's not, and I'm not trying to make an excuse, or neither are you. It's not every decision, but there are times.
There are.
Let's get to Teresa's question here. Teresa Lamb, thank you so much for your question. By the way, when will phase 2 of the septic and water start up? I live in phase 2 and have heard it will cost $35,000 and higher for each individual homeowner. I hope it will be years before phase 2, and I agree with you. I hope it is phase 2, because that is way too much money. And Teresa, I have a feeling you're going to have the whole city on your side on this one.
That's a lot of money. So my department doesn't deal directly with the water and sewer extension plan, but I know the utilities department has that information on the website, on the city's website. But also I know that the city is looking at ways to reduce the costs, because absolutely that is a lot of money. And even though any cost would likely be put on to the tax bill to be paid out over a number of years and not nobody can pay that all at one time, is still a lot of money.
It is.
So I know the city is actively looking at ways to reduce those costs for residents.
And we haven't even started phase one.
Right.
We legitimately talked about phase one, caused a complete mental breakdown within the city. We're doing petitions, doing all kinds of things, which is great. That's their right. But
Absolutely.
It was not even petitioning the stoppage of it, because it was never starting. There's a funding issue almost with every project, and I know you're going to shake your head with this. There's a funding issue with just every project out there, and as a city, we're growing so fast. We've got issues that people need to wake up about, and we need to have borrowing power, because we're the only city in the state that doesn't have that, from what I understand.
Yeah. So that is definitely a topic of conversation. And to give you an idea of how a normal city would handle the sewer and water extension, they'd go issue bonds, get the debt, they'd do the work, and then they would essentially repay those bonds as people pay to hook up, to those services for the next 30 years. So people who don't even live here now, people who haven't, moved to the city or built, would be paying on those bonds. But the work would already have been done. We're the only city who can't do that unless we go out to referendum first. I think there's 411 jurisdictions in Florida, and we're the only ones who can't borrow the money up front. So it does make it hard. That's why we're lagging behind on infrastructure, because we don't have that borrowing authority. And, people say sometimes, well, there's a solution. Just go ask the voters for that money.
Right.
The problem is if you have a project that's, $30 million and you have to save up the money before you can do that project. By the time you save the money up, now it's 60,000 or it's 120,000 or sorry, 120 million or 60 million. And then we lose out.
Or you get hit with Hurricane Ian.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you get hit with Hurricane Ian. Right. So, part of all of this is how do we come up with additional funding streams? What are our options on funding? And so there's multiple things that we can do, but I know the city's wanting to educate and provide information, and fortunately that's not my department. I'm tangentially involved in it, but I've got enough to wrap my head around. And thank goodness we have a finance team and a city attorney.
Well, we also have City Manager Jerome Fletcher coming on in 2 weeks, and that's going to be a great question for him to maybe address, along with the reason why we need to do some education on how the city needs to operate with bonds and borrowing money. I think that's going to be a more in-depth conversation.
Yeah, I've always worked all of the places where I've worked. We've been able to get infrastructure in advance through different kinds of funding mechanisms like that. So this is really strange to be in a city where we don't have that ability.
And I don't think our citizens truly know that either.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that'll be one of the aspects of education and dialogue with citizens, so that they do have all of the information that they need to make good decisions, and whatever those decisions may be, it's important to have information.
Yep. So I got another question. Can Miss Ray talk, and Ginger Miranda, thank you. Can Miss Ray talk about the density requirements that businesses have to come to Northport?
Sure, absolutely. And this is a big one. We often hear from people, and they'll ask us, why don't we have, X business? Why don't we have this restaurant or Dave and Buster's or, whoever? And it's That is a fantastic question. Just about every business like that requires there to be a certain number of residents within a certain radius. And I can give you an example. We talked recently with a company that does, I thought it was a really neat concept. It does indoor miniature golf with a brewery. I said, come to Northport. I want you here. So, yeah, I found this company. We found this company through, so looking at what some other areas in other states have, and found this business and thought this would be a great business for Northport. So we reached out to them and found out what their location guidelines were. They have to have, in order for them to build a new facility, they want 250,000 residents within a 10-mile radius. We aren't there. We're not even close. So they said, gosh, yeah, thanks for the interest, but you just don't have enough people for us to make that work. So that's one of the things that keeps us from getting businesses. Now, there is a sort of a general rule with a lot of restaurants and grocers and things like that, where they want to have 100,000 residents and a median household income of 75,000 in order to even start looking at you. We've hit the 75,000. We're there. We will be hitting the 100,000 mark on population probably in the next year or so, if we keep growing the way we have been. And that opens up a lot of doors for us. I will tell you that we've gotten more interest in the last 6 months than we've probably gotten in a long time. And we're starting to see some new doors opening. Costco would not be building here if we didn't meet those density thresholds that they're looking for. We have some other developers of really exciting entertainment and restaurant venues that we're talking with, who are now starting to get interested in Northport. So we're on the cusp. We really are. We've had a lot of hotel inquiries, and that is a sign that we are hitting that mark. We've had some really great discussions with some grocers that people would be very excited about. And we're really at the point where over the next probably 12 to 18 months, there's going to be some pretty exciting news here in Northport on a lot of different fronts.
And we need some exciting news.
We do.
So I've got 3 minutes left on the air, but I've got several questions left. Can you stay a little extra?
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome.
I don't know if you can hear me, John.
And yes, I can. Yes, I can. I don't know what just happened. It clipped me right out of there, but
I thought I was going to take over the show for you.
Yeah, go ahead, run with it. There are people out there that say, "Please do," and that's okay. So another one from Tammy Ream. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I hope I am, Tammy. The state limited how much money can be obtained from the user fees. Can Northport petition the state with the money issues it has caused Northport due to high growth, and get some relief from the state?
So that's a good question. I know where she's going with that. I think it's a good question, and I think that that's a conversation that, depending on how I think she's talking about impact fees, and we are limited as to how much we can raise impact fees. I think that, depending on what happens with the charter referendum, that's a conversation we may need to have with our legislative partners next year. I don't know. It's a little bit out of my wheelhouse as far as what we might be able to get the state to do, or what the state may have the ability to do. But something's going to have to happen. So, we've got to have money to to make improvements, not just to make improvements, but to fix what's already broken.
Right.
I see she says we have room for Buc-ee's. I can tell you that myself and our economic development team, we reached out personally to Buc-ee's and brought them their representatives to Northport and showed them around and showed them properties that we thought would be appropriate for them. And they liked the area. They wanted something with a little bit higher tourist volume. And so they went up to, they went somewhere else, but the
Orlando.
interchange.
They're definitely in Orlando.
Yeah. So, but yes, we brought them in. We reached out to them. I'll tell you that we're being very proactive on the economic development front, more than Northport's ever been, and we're making those contacts and bringing people in. I think I've got 3 or 4 appointments over the next couple of weeks with site selectors for different companies to come in and look at sites. So yeah.
How difficult, and I have to ask this because people act like economic development, just go get them. And then the funny thing is when and I don't want to say it's economic development, because I think it's rooftops that bring a lot of these companies to, population and the density side of things. But to go out and really drive the city into the new business environment, how difficult is that in today's world?
Oh, well, there's a lot of competition. Everybody's after the same companies. But I have very good friends who are what I consider to be rock stars in the economic development world. They work for cities and other states that have attracted some phenomenal businesses. It can take years to get one business in the door and get everything worked out and get them open. But it is really hard. A lot of it's driven by rooftops, how many people we have, and what our income is here. But I'll tell you, I've just recently, within the last few weeks, had an opportunity to mix and mingle with a lot of people in the world of development and site selection. Those people who work for companies or who work for consultants who go out and look for the sites where the businesses they work with want to go. And so many of them, when I talk to them about where Northport is, what Northport has to offer, how our growth is going, so many of them said, I never knew there was anything between Sarasota and Fort Myers, or I never knew there was really anything between Tampa and Fort Myers. And gosh, I need to come look at Northport. And that's why I now have 3 or 4 appointments in the next, couple of weeks with site selectors. The other thing too, is that they look at processes. They look at how long would it take them to get through a process to get approval for their site and get built. And if it's going to take 2 or 3 years, some of them won't even give you a chance. They want certainty as to if they're going to come here and they're going to spend money, they want to make sure that they can get approved. And so I know one of the things that we're looking at in our new Unified Land Development Code is an administrative process. If somebody meets all the regulations, they dot all the I's, they cross all the T's, they meet all the provisions of the ULDC and the comp plan, we're looking at an administrative approval process. And that is one of the biggest incentives for businesses to locate in a city is if they can get administrative approval, if they meet all the regulations, they'll they will move to your city instead of a neighboring city that has a more rigorous process, because they know they're going to be able to get in the ground faster. So that's a huge incentive for them. And we've had some pretty big developers with big brand name companies that people would recognize and say, we want them in Northport, who are watching our process, are watching the adoption of our ULDC, and are waiting for it to go into effect because they want to use that administrative process.
So I'm gonna go to Chuck's question here in a minute, but I was watching the workshop the other day, and the permitting department for me has always been my thorn in my side, and because of my customers. Because if they're building a house or they're doing something business related, of course, as a realtor, I get the phone call, and then you get the phone call,
I get the
and
phone call.
and I'm not the only one, and there's others, but I was watching the workshop the other day, and I didn't get to watch the tail end because I had to go show a house. But with the you were trying to streamline some of the things through. Did that get approved, or did that just stay in the hands of the commission? Because some of that I on my side, where you're talking about a 6-inch move or just a small discretion.
Yeah. So the for the most part, it went through. The commission said, yes, we want there to be some administrative ability to approve these things if somebody's meeting all the codes, or in the case that you're talking about, if somebody's house is almost finished, or it is finished, and they're ready to close on their house and move in, we go out there to do the final inspection, or we get the as-built back from the surveyor and find out that the pool deck encroaches into the setback by 3 inches. In the past and right now, what happens is everything comes to a screeching halt. We can't issue a certificate of occupancy. The people can't close on their house. They can't move into their house. And the builder has to go through a variance process to get approval for that 3 inches that's already been built in. And that can take 6 months. In the meantime, the house is sitting there, and then they can't close on it. And the poor family who built the house can't move into it. And we are proposing, and it looks like it'll be approved, hopefully, that staff will have the ability on those minor things to have some administrative approval on single family homes, where they can go ahead and get moved into their house and close on it, and because that's such a hardship for people who have waited 2 years to build their house and now they can't move in.
But is that going to change? Is that going to change the flow in the permitting department? Because the permitting department is under stress.
Oh, yes. So the biggest thing that we are doing to help the permit department is we're implementing new permitting software. Right now, the software, the permitting system that we have is archaic. I mean, it's like one step up from, stone and chisel. Okay.
No, I actually think we're using them.
I have a stack of stones outside my office.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, it is really bad. It's not user friendly. It doesn't let the citizens do much. It doesn't let the contractors do much, and it lets staff do even less. So we've been working on this for a year now, and we are expecting to go live in December of this year. We're converting to a program called Acela, which is what Sarasota County uses, Charlotte County uses, and lots of other local jurisdictions. Our contractors are thrilled. They all know this system. It makes the process so much easier. Just about everything can be done online. There's instant notifications when an inspection is done or comments are coming out or a permit's ready to be picked up. Emails notifications go out immediately to the contractors, to all of the parties involved, and it makes the inspections easier. It is so much more streamlined than what we have now. It's like night and day, and we are so excited about this program. It's been difficult to get it built and implemented for Northport. We're in the throes of it right now, and I've got several staff members who are dedicated to doing nothing but the implementation of that system. It's costing about $3.5 million. That is being paid for out of the building fund. So for people who don't know what the building fund is, that is a fund that is paid for with building permit fees. That's contractors and developers and anyone who pulls a permit, they pay a permit fee, and that's what that fund is. So it's not paid with tax money or general fund money or any other fund. But it is something that our builders have been and contractors have been, really advocating for.
Right.
And I think it is one of the biggest things that is going to change the permitting and inspection process for Northport. It is a night and day change.
That's going to be fantastic. And I know for a fact that anybody who's going through the process, if they could go through the old process and go through the new process, night and day.
It is.
And throw the sticks and stones away. We're going from lack of communication to total communication.
Yes, and people being able to go online and instantly see where their permit is, what
Correct.
the status is, what the comments are. I mean, it's so easy. And in a lot of cases, they will be able to. In some cases, there will be certain types of permits that they can just put all the information in and print the permit off on their home printer, and there you go.
So I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to get to Chuck English. With the new data that we're utilizing, will that update, or 10 years from today, are we going to have this conversation again?
Oh, I hope not.
But it is an updating system, right?
The system is updated on a regular basis. So Acela is what's called a land management system. So it manages everything with our land. All of our parcel data for all of our properties will get updated regularly. So it's the kind of thing that a couple of times a year they'll roll out updates that will happen automatically. So as long as the Acela company, which they're a huge company, they're all over the country, as long as they run those updates and as long as we continue to pay the annual maintenance fee, which we will do, then we should not have to go through this again. This is the 5th time I have gone through a complete land management permitting software conversion. Wow. So fifth jurisdiction I've done this in, and I tell you what, I'm kind of done with it. I don't want to do it again.
The next place you're going to go, you're going to check mark that one.
Or I'll just stay here and enjoy it.
There you go.
That's really what I'd like
enjoy
to
the end result.
Exactly. Just get it all done and be able to stay here and enjoy the fruits of that labor and watch it work the way it's supposed to.
Nice. So Chuck has a question and a concern. It relates to the rules for the citizen and developers, but not for me. I'm okay. So the city dude sitting department have to adhere to the ULDC, or is that open to discretion, such as many important surveys, such as drainage?
Okay, so I think hopefully I'm getting this. I think maybe what Chuck is asking is if the city's going to build a project or a road or a building, does the city have to follow the same regulations? Do we have to get the same environmental surveys? Do we have to get the topos? And do we have to do the same flood and mitigation and, those kinds of things? Under state law, we're exempt. We don't have to do a lot of those things, but the city does. We do build the flood standards. We do get the environmental surveys done. We don't want to, bury gopher tortoises any more than anybody else wants to. So we want to make sure those things are done. The cities and governments are exempt from certain regulations as a standard rule in the state of Florida and most other states. But the development of new buildings, for instance, our new utility building that's being built, they will have to follow the ULDC. So they're going to have to follow that for, stormwater and everything else. So it's not a rules for thee and not for me kind of thing. They do have to follow those rules.
So we've got no more questions, believe it or not. I can't believe it, but I am going to say that we have a Northport Forward United Tour event coming up at Lakeside Plantation on June 27th. Are we going to have staff there to Q&A like always?
Always.
So you've got we are working with a nonprofit organization in the city, Northport Forward. How's that relationship? Oh, I missed your question. Sorry, Robin. What is it? Oh, there it is. Hold on 1 second. I'll go to Northport Forward. Thanks, Robin. As you sign off, is that your question, Robin? I thought it was a statement more than anything. I was going to flash that at the end, but as you sign off, I just wanted to say that you are a blessing to our city, Alaina. We need you, so take care of you. Absolutely take care of yourself. Please.
Robin's going to make me cry.
Yeah, I'm saving that special one for the end, Robin.
Oh, thank you, Robin. It means a lot. I mean, sometimes this job is really hard, and sometimes things get really, really tough. And I know Robin and I have talked a lot. Robin knows I care. She does. And I know how much Robin cares. And I think Robin is one of those that, when we sat down and talked, we found we had a whole lot more in common than we have differences. And so I appreciate her. I appreciate everything she does. And I appreciate her support for our natural resources division. They've gotten a lot of knowledge from her, and I will take care of myself, Robin. I promise I will.
And then I've gotten another one that's just popped up from Pamela Kota. I know I'm going to say this wrong.
Tokars.
Yes, I did say it right. Okay, good. So this is a lengthy one. She's going to cover us up. Can you read that one on your screen or not?
I sure can. Let's see.
So it's about the ULDC.
So I see part of it.
Yeah, it says, Alaina, thank you for the compliment regarding our group. It was a learning experience. Sorry about my contact lenses are drying out. It was a learning experience for us. We started to inform residents and spread the word about the ULDC. Some of the residents we reached out to were unable to meet with you regarding their areas being rezoned. I do have a question regarding the smaller neighborhoods being rezoned to allow for commercial use. Most of these areas are in parts of the city and not in the bigger activity centers. What happens to their properties once it kind of, let's see.
So I was able to read the comment on another laptop.
Does it kind of end?
Once they are rezoned and not able to build until the sewer is run to their property. So we've been working on ways that sewer and water can get extended to certain areas. I think I mentioned earlier that the intention for most of it is that developers will run the sewer and water. And we have been talking to some developers who are looking at purchasing large swaths of rezoned property to be able to develop and how to run water and sewer out to the eastern areas of the city. There may be ways that we can get it done in a shorter period of time at no cost to the taxpayers, which is our goal. And then all of those people would be able to tap into that.
Awesome.
So yeah, so we are actively working on those solutions.
Pamela, you may be late to the party, but you got your question answered. I hope that was good for you. And it's always nice to have listeners on. Thank you guys so much for participating, because really the only reason we do these shows is for the citizens to hear the answers and have a good Q&A with the representatives. So Alaina, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I kept you on an extra 20 minutes.
That's okay. That's okay.
Northport Forward, the 27th, at Lakeside Plantation. Look up northportforward.com and get yourself signed up to participate, because you're going to learn a lot about the city. Share this information out there. Also, the farmers market next to the Sarasota Memorial ER on Toledo Blade. Go check that out this weekend. Make sure you tell everybody hello. And I will tell you on a personal note, my wife and I went. It's small, it's quick, it's enjoyable, and it's a great community gathering, because we saw so many friends coming in and out, and we couldn't leave. So it was a great time. We got a lot. We did purchase some things. Go check it out. Let's support our local farmers market here in Northport on Toledo Blade. And WKDW Radio is partners with the city of Northport to be the emergency broadcasting network. So 97.5 FM is the dial you turn to for all of your hurricane or emergency updates from the city of Northport. And those of you who don't understand that, they have their laptops, so they can actually, and some of you would love this, take me off the air right now if they push the right button. But let's hope they don't. But that means there's an emergency. So they have this capability, and it's great to have that partnership. Alaina, go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure, and I enjoy the discussion. I enjoy the questions from the citizens and the community, and just really appreciate you giving us this opportunity. It's been a good discussion.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye, John. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio saying thanks, and have a great day, and be safe, and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.